Hi, welcome to the Times Visuals Daily Briefing. It's Sunday, August 16th. I'm Jessica Steinberg, speaking today with political correspondent Tal Schneider. Hi, Tal. It's been a while.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Tal. Over the weekend in Lebanon, there was a Hezbollah attack that violated the ceasefire, seriously wounding 3 IDF soldiers. Israel then struck back with strikes that killed at least 11 people, including Lebanese civilians. There were also 2 different incidents in the Gaza Strip, also considered violations of the ceasefire. There were no IDF injuries in those 2 incidents. We'll talk about some of that in the first half of the podcast. We're also going to look at the upcoming Likud primaries, which are tomorrow, Monday, and other updates that we have about the upcoming election in October. So stay with us. Okay, Tal, let's start with Lebanon. Obviously, that was extremely significant, given that there were 3 very serious injuries of soldiers. Tell us what you know and what's being said now in the aftermath.
Right, so there was an infringement of the ceasefire. 3 soldiers were hit, severely wounded by those string drones, what we call, and Israel reacted, hitting a major commander in the Raduan force. And as you mentioned also, some people nearby him were killed or wounded. And this attack brought in Netanyahu to make a special announcement on a Friday night during a Shabbat, something he rarely does. And that was because, even the families of the soldiers were not even given the announcements of the wounded soldiers, but he was very fast to issue a statement in English only, making sure that the foreign media, the media in Lebanon and media around the world, knows the order of things. From what we understand, the American administration also realized that this was that the Israeli strike came only after Hezbollah infringement of the ceasefire, making sure that they understand the situation. And according to what I know so far this morning, on a Sunday morning, the American administration did understand the situation.
Meaning that it's a violation of the ceasefire, and this is during talks between Lebanon and Israel.
Exactly. We don't know of any further retaliation. We hope, things will go back to, because this comes after 2 months of quiet in this border. As you mentioned, also in Gaza, over there, a tank was hit by ammunition,
Hamas explosive device, right?
Explosive device in the southern part of Gaza Strip. The soldiers are fine. There was another incident where someone got close to the yellow line, bringing fire by the soldiers. But other than that, this is the only things that happened in Gaza.
In terms of the Gaza Strip, in terms of what happened there, that they were both incidents, I believe, were happened near what's called the yellow line, which is the yellow ceasefire line. So that's where, every side is supposed to stay on their side, in essence.
Right. Again, IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, issued a statement saying that this incident took place during an operation of Givati Brigade, very close to the yellow line. It's there in another incident, the same, I think maybe paratroopers brigade, they spotted 2 terror operatives who crossed the yellow line in an attempt to put some weapons or to hide something, and they approached in a manner that was a threat to the soldiers, and that's the reason they opened fire and killed them, those 2 operatives by Hamas.
Got it. Okay. All right, let's take a very sharp turn and move to the upcoming election. Specifically, the long-awaited Likud primary is tomorrow. There's been a lot of discussion about the primary itself, and now it's actually happening, and there's just a lot of discussion out there about what will be, what could be, what will happen, who will have the seats. You are deeply engaged in this, as always, Tal. So tell us what your what's sort of at the top of your head as you look toward tomorrow, as you look toward Monday and the Likud primary?
Right. It's very important to understand. This is the voters tomorrow in the Likud primaries. This is 140,000 registered participants. They are the voters. It's a small number if you think of it.
Tiny.
Yeah,
Tiny.
but it's a crucial number. It's the biggest party in Israel to compare with, for example, the Democrats who have over 100,000 participants. Here you have 140,000. For many years, this number was, a big number, and no one else even got close to that. But the Democrats managed to register more people just lately. Back to the Likud, we are not sure how many of the 140 voters will exercise their right to vote. It may be between 50 to 60%, maybe 70%. It's not for sure. The biggest location where they have most of the voters in a significant gap, it's Tel Aviv. It's not
Really?
Jerusalem. It's not the southern
Wow.
cities. Yes, it's Tel Aviv area where they have most registered voters. It's been like that for years. I know the Likud has a reputation for being more engaged in peripheral areas in the northern part
Right.
of Israel, but still, Tel Aviv is the biggest city. So most of the action is going to take place in Tel Aviv, in a sports stadium where they come to vote. It's called Shlomo Sports Stadium in northern Tel Aviv. So I think there is a huge tension among the Likud ministers and MKs, members of the Knesset, because at least half of them are going to be kicked out. And why is that? The Likud has now around 20 to 21 seats, according to the latest polls. That's very little for the Likud. On top of that,
Remind us how many they have now. They had until the government folded.
so in the outcoming Knesset, they have 32 seats, but because they are the ruling party and they have ministers, they were able to enter up to around 40 people, because some people were, granted with, appointments, and some ministers kept on being minister while they allow more members of the Knesset to come in. So up to 40 pots were, were managed to be politicians in the outcoming Knesset. That's not the case for the outgoing Knesset. A, because the Likud may lose, and then they will not have the ability to bring more jobs and appointments and so on. And B, because the polls suggest that they have between 20 to 21 seats, maybe 22. And I have to give a word of caution. In most elections, the Likud has a little bit more than the latest poll. So if the latest poll is 21, they may have up to 23 or something like that. It's hard for me to predict, but we have to take that into account, that the polling usually don't reflect Likud, precisely. So having said that, let's say 23 people, and among those 23 seats, Netanyahu can appoint his own people up to around, if you look up to the number 30, he can appoint around 10 people.
Meaning Netanyahu, as the leader of the party, has that ability
authority to appoint his own people. Meaning that, between number 2, number 1 is going to be Netanyahu. Between number 2 and number 21, you only have around 11 to 15 empty spots, even less than that. And if you go all the way up to 30, then you go up to 17 or 18, but that's probably around half of the people that they had. So some of the ministers that you were, acquainted with during those years may be kicked out. Will it be Nir Barkat, the commerce minister? Will it be Miki Zohar, the culture minister? Will it be Justice Minister Yariv Levin? I don't know. I'm just throwing names here. I'm not sure.
Right. You really are.
Yeah, those names were just, suggested, at the top of my head. However, we do know that in around Netanyahu's close people, they are conducting an effort to oust Nir Barkat. This is the commerce minister. And the story behind is that, according to what we hear, Nir Barkat led a failed attempt to replace Prime Minister Netanyahu right after the massacre on October 7th. Now, this is interesting, Jessica, because this story has been somewhat out for this last couple of 2 years. I mean, people knew details, but in the last couple of days, just before the primaries, Channel 12 mostly, but also Channel 14, which is aligned with Netanyahu, they brought to the viewers lots of new details on this specific story, meaning someone was aiming the timing of the story just right before the primaries. What we call this is like a clear attempt to just oust him. We'll have to see on Monday. Will the participants in the Likud primaries, the Likud party members, are they reacting in a way that they will be mad at Nir Barkat and oust him? Or are they, it can be quite the opposite. Sometimes when Netanyahu is putting a lot of pressure in one direction, the free voters, what we call, the free participants, they are reacting in the opposite directions, meaning they will support Nir Barkat. It's hard for me to predict.
You can't really have any idea. I just wanted to mention to our listeners that Nir Barkat is the former mayor of Jerusalem, just if his name is familiar and you're not located here. And it's interesting to me to have read all of the everything that's being said about Nir Barkat right now, because of course, in the months after October 7th, a lot of people I knew were just saying, well, where's Nir Barkat? Why isn't he saying anything? Why is he letting this situation continue with the standing prime minister? But everyone looked to certain voices in Likud, assuming that they would try to get Netanyahu out of his seat. So it's
the so-called co-conspirator, which I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think, it made logic right after October 7th to replace the failing prime minister. But, on the Likud side, from their own side, they think this is a conspiracy to, do a putsch or a coup against the prime minister. The person who was also behind the scene was Yuli Edelstein, now out of the Likud. Now, Yuli Edelstein was asked about that in the last couple of days on the media, since he is out of the Likud already and contending in a different party list. He admitted, he said, yes, we were thinking, this is a reliable information that you are hearing right now. Obviously, Nir Barkat is denying everything. It's all over the media, denying, pledging his loyalty to the prime minister, Netanyahu, pledging his support to the prime minister. Sometimes in the Likud, in order to get elected, you really have to submit all of your support and warm words for the prime minister. So that's what he's doing. That's what the rest of them are doing. It's not really a nice process to watch from the side, because some of the contenders are bashing Arabs, using very harsh terms. Internally, they're attacking Israel's attorney general. They're attacking the media. Everyone is to be blamed in the situation of the war and, the Israel's social situation. Everybody is to be blamed except Netanyahu. They all, they want the media to take responsibility to what's going on. They want the attorney general to take responsibility for everything that is wrong in Israel. They say that Arabs are to be blamed. The left is to be blamed. And of course, Netanyahu and the ministers who are, managing this country, not only in the last 4 years, but for years, they are, clean as a dove.
As a whistle.
So, yes.
Clean as a whistle. Right. Okay. Let's take a break. When we're back, Tal, just we're near the end of the podcast, but let's talk a little bit more about the polls from Zman Yisrael, from our sister site, and just what else they show as we get closer to the October election. So stay with us. So I took a look at Zman Yisrael, and it shows that Gadi Eisenkot's Yashar party would win 25 seats in the Knesset. You just mentioned that Likud would have 21 if the elections would be held right now, which is just, it's kind of astounding to look at those numbers. I don't know. Am I just naive, or is it as astounding as I think it is?
It's Jessica, I mean, I'm sure we've been talking about that during last couple of months. In Israel, it's not enough to be the biggest party. So the number 25 for Gadi Eisenkot as opposed to the number 21 for the Likud is it can be meaningless if you don't have your own bloc, meaning
Right.
around the 25 you need to come up with a group of parties and to bring them together into a coalition. If you were following last election in Israel, the day of the election is not the day when you win the seat as a prime minister. The day of the election is only a day where you start your coalition negotiation. And only after you finish your coalition negotiation, which may take up to around 8 weeks or so, only then you know who is Israel prime minister. So don't be upset or overjoyed on October 27th if you see the numbers as we portray them in the polls right now, because, for example, Gadi Eisenkot will have to sit together with Naftali Bennett, Avigdor Lieberman, Yair Golan, and others in order to come together and bring a bloc. A bloc needs to have at least 61 seats. If Gadi Eisenkot doesn't have 61 seats, and currently he doesn't, he have 59 or 58, then you may go into another election, which is, not a good option. But also there is an option that Gadi Eisenkot has been talking about in the last couple of days. And he's been saying in closed-door meetings that he may swear in a minority government, meaning you can swear in without the 61, you can swear in 59 as opposed to 52, for example. Let's say the Likud bloc has 52, the Gadi Eisenkot bloc has 59. You can swear in this government because you have a majority in the plenum, but it is a minority government that will have a very hard time to maneuver anything. And this is another, it's like a pretext for another election. So you're either going to get another election very soon, or you're going to get another election in, less than a year. That's a problematic situation. I think one of the reasons Eisenkot is, he wants to do that because he hopes that someone from the Likud, if the Likud will bring bad results, some people from the Likud may either leave the Likud and join him, or maybe he met with Gafni, the head of United Torah Judaism. Maybe Gafni will, break ranks with the Likud. It will be very problematic because of the draft issue. Everybody insists of a mandatory draft. So the politics in Israel it's complicated. It's unlike the presidential election in the United States, where
Right.
immediately who won. In Israel, you need to be patient and wait for a little bit more of explanation on our behalf to see what are the results and who can get, bring together a coalition to set a government.
Okay, and we still have a good amount of time until we'll know that. So more to be discussed on the way there. Thank you, Tal. Appreciate
Thank
all
you,
the
Jessica.
explanations.
Thank you.
Sure. And thanks to you for listening to the Times Visuals Daily Briefing. Stay tuned for tomorrow's installment. This episode is produced by Ari Schlacht. As always, feel free to recommend us to other listeners and rate us wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, take care, be well, and have yourselves a good week.